Good evening, and welcome to our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri. As always, with our beloved Alokbhai. Namaste. Now, I'm told that today is the 99th exploration.
Is it?
And so, to celebrate it, I want to share with you Alok's inspiration. A new series, The Joy of Savitri.
So I didn't know that the number we are touching a holy number. Yeah.
And in this Joy of Savitri, we will cover many, many things because it opens us to such a wideness of Savitri. Subjects on love, subjects on beauty, subjects on nature. It's endless.
Just the Divine Mother,
Yeah,
her advent.
her advent, yes.
I think there is no greater joy for earth than to have the embodied divine walk upon it. That's how I look at it.
Yes.
And I also feel there is no greater tragedy than to see the embodied divine vanish from our eyes. To those who are sensitive enough, of course, much of the world doesn't recognize, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. But there cannot be any greater tragedy. Mother speaks of this that throughout the 30 years that she lived in Pondicherry with Sri Aurobindo's physical presence, she says there was such a sense of solid security.
Oh, yes.
She said, I had to do nothing. Just whatever came, the whole ashram, everything was growing up. I just had to tell him. That's all.
Yeah.
And he would not say anything much, but she knew it's all done. Then she says that later on she had to do both the roles. Though she is in contact fully with Sri Aurobindo,
Yes.
inwardly.
Yes.
But outwardly, because people do not know, so she had to play both the roles. When Sri Aurobindo is in his physical body, countless letters people would write to Sri Aurobindo.
Yeah.
And then things changed because now they didn't know Sri Aurobindo is right there, more accessible. But we want somebody very human, tangible.
Yeah.
So she had to play both the roles of, Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And
Yeah.
it must have been a very difficult moment.
Yesterday I heard the most beautiful recounting of an experience that mother said she had never met anyone with such humility as Sri Aurobindo. And since she said that, every day in his room they put the flowers of humility.
Oh.
Never missing a day. It continues today.
And this humility combined with tremendous power.
Yes.
That also she mentions when a sadhika passed away who was very prone to anger and everything. She asked Sri Aurobindo that what happens to those who leave their bodies here? And Sri Aurobindo simply said, look. And then she saw that her forehead, there was Sri Aurobindo's symbol. And then Sri Aurobindo's voice saying, they come straight to me. And then the mother, for a moment, she says, I knew, but still I asked him, even this? Because she was known for a very bad temperament. Very moody, very anger prone. Even this? And Sri Aurobindo said, yes, it is unconditional.
Yes. Yes.
And then she recounts, she says, she couldn't imagine that anyone, and she further continues, regardless of their state during the time of death.
Oh.
Yes. Which would mean, and she specified, even if somebody had committed, let's say, suicide, there have been instances.
Yes.
Regardless of the state at the time of death, he would come straight to me. And then Champak Lalji, when he recounts this from the mother's, she recounts it. It's there in the agenda.
Yeah.
Then when Champak Lalji notes this incident, he doesn't note the whole detail except that, mother said this. And then he says, we had heard about Kashi in India, and this is the modern Kashi that Sri Aurobindo has created. So Kashi, it is believed that it's the land of Shiva, and whoever dies there goes straight to heaven. Not heaven, but to his abode, which is obviously much greater. And so he says that this has been created.
I read recently where Sri Aurobindo had written about those who take up the yoga. And he says, there are many who stumble along the way. And then he says there are some who don't achieve anything. But he said they have prepared themselves for the next life.
Yes. In fact, sometimes as today we were, discussing this, some people, I met someone today morning, and how very early somebody's life, he was recounting how he had some remarkable experiences. I mean, experiences which I'm sure yogis will die for having those experiences. Clear-cut experiences, the first experiences of actually the fourth dimension, which Mother speaks of, that you cannot understand spiritual life unless you have experienced fourth dimension. You can't, physicists grapple over this, that how to explain fourth dimension. Because in fourth dimension, you are inside and outside together. It's an impossibility, but it's possible in fourth dimension. And he had this experience. It's a rarest mystic experience of seeing yourself in everything. And then, of course, the descent, the liquid flowing through the spinal column, the pressure of the force, and the vast eye extended in heaven, as Sri Aurobindo's light, all these things. But then the difficulties which come up in life, in nature, and people often wonder how to make sense of it. Well, the first part is because in the past life there has been already a preparation, so you start from a tremendous vantage point. And if one were to lead only a spiritual life in the traditional way, then one would not bother about anything else. Every mystic had very challenging outer life. Very challenging. But because in this yoga, sooner or later, the stress is on change of nature, that the difficulties come up. Which includes things like attachment, which includes, things in our outer life, things that are happening around you, and people, that's where people begin to flounder, stumble, as you said. Because inner experiences, just imagine.
Yes. Often they are given initially.
Yes,
And then retreat,
it's a promise also.
retreat
That also,
behind the veil.
yes.
So
Yes,
the
it's
other
also a
things can be
promise.
worked
Yes,
out. Yes,
it's
it is.
also a promise of the future.
Yes.
So, as you rightly said, and it's a wonderful journey, but it's a long journey, and one should be prepared for it. I think that's very important. That's why Sri Aurobindo would often say, speak of call. And then people ask, what is the call? We read last time about initiation, awakening.
Right.
So he said, you can't define it. You either have it or you don't have
Yes. Yes.
it. You have the call for the yoga or you don't have the call for it. You will know it inside you. But once you have the call, then just go through it.
But it's certain after
it's
that.
certain.
He says that no matter what happens along the way,
Yes.
it is certain.
Yes. I think today that WhatsApp message you were sharing is worth really reading. And then we can proceed.
Good.
It's a very interesting, it's okay. No problem. Yeah. Because, it's a joy of sharing something. So, this is from the Synthesis of Yoga, page 780. A present incapacity, however heavy may seem its pressure, is only a trial of faith and a temporary difficulty. And to yield to the sense of inability is, for the seeker of the integral yoga, a nonsense. He doesn't mince words. He's not even saying that, it's not a good way to think, don't indulge in negativity, it's nonsense. For his object is a development of a perfection that is there already, latent in the being, because man carries the seed of the divine life in himself, in his own spirit. The possibility of success is involved and implied in the effort. Look at these lines. It's implied, involved and implied in the effort. So if you are putting an effort, success has been already granted to you, only it has to unfold with time. And victory is assured because behind is the call and guidance of an omnipotent power. So, Sri Aurobindo is not relying on our sadhana, thankfully. He's relying on his own power.
Yes.
And I think that would be a wonderful way to start.
So we'll continue for a while
Yes.
on the
Canto 1.
brief summaries
Yes,
of the
yes.
48 cantos.
You see.
But from time to time we may,
Yeah, we'll,
in the joy of
Yes,
Savitri,
we'll
go elsewhere.
joy will be the indication, and see how the divine works. People don't understand, and when they even try to compare Sri Aurobindo as a guru, master, guru guides, shows you the path. You walk. He tells you a method, a technique. Now, very often people wonder why Sri Aurobindo and the mother have not given an ineluctable way. They have told many techniques, if one wants to. But because they are not relying on techniques that we may do, they are relying on themselves. Look at the beauty. Techniques, okay, because man wants to do something and he believes, he is doing something, and it opens the door to grace because he believes in that. The famous story of when they have to build a bridge to Lanka.
Yes.
Now
yes.
they are building another, so a small one. They should have called architects from Ramayana. So, what do the monkeys do? They actually, the Nal and Neel have got a curse. And this curse turns out to be a boon. That they put the stones with Lord Rama's name and it floats.
And it floats, yes.
So, we have to get the sense of effort. Sometimes we have to also feel that we are doing something. But this yoga does not depend on that. It depends on opening oneself, surrender, aspiration, wanting it, seeking for it. And it's done for you.
Sincerity.
Sincerity. And see, here comes these lines on page 8. Because just as last time we discussed a little bit about why should Satyavan die? So, why should the Divine Mother, who is omnipotent, omniscience, why should Sri Aurobindo, who is omnipotent and omniscience, one with that consciousness, why should he have to go through the difficulties and challenges?
Mother writes a lot about this.
Yes.
How she says that if I didn't come down to you, you couldn't approach me.
In one of her prayers, he speaks of, today only I was reading it again, may all earthly desires come into me. Because otherwise she is stainless. So she is calling for earthly desires. We read last time that earthly desires touched her like a sweet alien note.
Yeah.
Because she is born free of that. She is born free. So she calls the earthly desires so that she can offer it to the Lord and transmute them. So we have on page 8, at the very beginning, thus trapped in the gin of earthly destinies, awaiting her ordeals our abode, outcast from her inborn felicity, accepting life's obscure terrestrial robe, hiding herself even from those she loved, the Godhead greater by a human feet. Hiding even from those she loved, right through.
Yes.
She would do that.
She's sweeping, she's carrying water.
Even Sri Aurobindo, when he has decided that he will withdraw. So on 24th November there is a darshan and they don't get a clue. The only clue they get is when they are asked to hurry through the queue. And they wonder why. So Sri Aurobindo holding the entire, highest consciousness sitting there, while at the same time he is drinking the poison of humanity. So that's what he was doing. And then even on 2nd December, she went as usual with the program. And she calls Dr. Sanyal. And Dr. Sanyal comes and he thinks he has to intervene. And then he gives a whole list what should be done, should not be done. The mother scolds him. Who has asked you to intervene? So he's wondering why he has been called. And he wants to go back. And the mother tells him, can't you stay a few more days? And then he realizes that, oh, it was a special grace given to him so that he can be there when the Lord, sojourns in another, goes beyond our sight. And he was one of those whom the mother touched and, he could see the pinkish golden light like a mantle covering Sri Aurobindo. It's a very interesting book he has, or rather now it's available as a book, A Call from Pondicherry, about this incidents. So, they are not just gurus who are pointing a way, giving us a technique or a method. They are doing it for us, and it's difficult to believe that it's possible.
This word, jinn, the
Yes,
earthly destinies. Years ago, the jinn was a trap for men. It would catch a man. And so she's caught in that trap
destiny
of earthly destinies.
Yes. She enters that field deliberately.
Yes.
She doesn't have to.
Yes.
And look at this marvelous line, the Godhead greater by a human fate. Otherwise, again, people often say, yes, Divine Mother is within and above. So recently I was sharing this with someone and I said, don't get into this illusion. Yes, Divine Mother is within, above, Universal Mother. But then when she takes a human form, comes as an avatar, as the individual mother, she is all of that, the transcendent and the universal. But the door to transformation opens through her.
Yes.
Otherwise, yes, great yogis have celebrated their relationship with the Divine Mother. That's a different story altogether. Sri Ramakrishna, Ram Prasad, many others who have, So, but we must know that the Godhead greater by a human fate. She has brought with her the key to the flaming doors of ecstasy.
Yes.
A dark foreknowledge separated her from all of whom she was the star and stay. Too great to impart the peril and the pain. In her toned depths she kept the grief to come. Now comes these lines.
Yes.
As one who watching over men left blind takes up the load of an unwitting race. So even people don't know that she has taken up the load and continues to take it. So many instances, where people went and some astrologer has said somebody's lines that I'm going to die young or things like that, and she would hold and concentrate and say, it's gone. It's an old formation, gone. Harboring a foe, whom with her heart she must feed. Unknown her act, unknown the doom she faced. Unhelped, she must foresee and dread and dare. So this is the Divine Mother's work. And then, of course, Sri Aurobindo describes, we don't realize how many things happen in our life. Only that is allowed which is necessary for our progress. Many things are taken away, which we don't, she creates the path free of obstacles. But some are needed because that's a challenge to the soul. That's a free choice we have to make. Certain attachments, we are the ones who have to. But even that, you see, one of Sri Aurobindo's first encounters in Alipur jail. So, see how the divine works. So he says, why I have been brought here. He says, even I had my periods of doubt. And then he says, I had asked for your protection only for this work of the country. And then he hears a voice, wait and see. And then slowly Sri Krishna reveals to him the secret. And then he realizes and says so beautifully, the bonds that I could not break myself, he came and broke it for me. But that is Sri Aurobindo, because he could surrender and say, gratitude, O Lord, thou hast broken the bonds. But we cry.
And we can say that he is breaking the bonds
Yes,
for
yes,
us.
yes. So we have to take it in that spirit.
Yes.
So she takes up the burden. The long foreknown and fatal morn was here, bringing a noon that seemed like every noon. For nature walks upon her mighty way, unheeding when she breaks a soul, a life. Leaving her slain behind, she travels on. Man only marks, and God's all-seeing eyes. So another very beautiful, see, there are so many beautiful sutras in Savitri. For instance, this idea that God sees everything, God knows everything, is so wonderful. That means not a single effort, not a single pain, not a single struggle ever goes waste. He has watched over it and is documented.
In the Christian tradition, they have a saying, not one sparrow is forgotten.
Yes. Not one sparrow. Wow.
And you see here, this is so interesting because we see the long foreknown and fatal morn was here. We don't know anything about this
Yes,
fatal morn
yes.
yet. We don't know that it's long foreknown. He keeps that behind
Yes,
for a while.
yes. That is the epic part of it.
Yes.
But it's beautiful that how there is the story of a lady who was very almost uncouth, and she could get angry and sometimes speak to the mother. Not the first one of whom I was speaking.
Yes.
I mean, so there are quite a few. So,
Cooks also.
yeah. But this lady, when someone asked mother, why do you give her so much love, so much, she doesn't value it. So mother had this to say, my child, you don't know how much she has suffered and struggled in her previous life. She had foreseen it. And so she was the recipient of a very special grace. Now, of course, it was up to her how she uses it. That's where the human part comes, our effort, that when the grace comes,
Yes.
whether we receive it with joy and gratitude and faithfulness and surrender, or we simply keep complaining. But the divine doesn't forget. Another story is of Amrita. So it is said that once when mother had come, as one of her vibhutis was Joan of Arc, and when she was at the stake, she wanted the cross, and nobody would dare to give anything like a cross to her, because they would note him, and he would also be next excommunicated, or there would be an inquisition set up. So Amrita was one of the priests at the time, and he quickly picked up a hay and made a cross out of it and just threw it into the fire. Now it's a small gesture, but the divine has noted it. Another very interesting story of God's all-seeing eyes is when a lady in the train heard so many things. People were speaking about mother and mother and mother. A group of devotees were coming. So when they were getting down, this poor person tells them that, see, I've been hearing all this you have been saying. I don't know whether I'll ever get a chance to see her, but from my side, can you take this money and give it to her? That was 1 rupee. So they went and gave it to mother. Mother kept her in her hands, kept the money, that 1 rupee in her hands for quite some time. She went into trance. And then she says, the divine will find it difficult to repay this.
Yes. And the story of the postman,
Postman,
who
yes.
every month gave 1 rupee to mother. Month after month, year after year. 1 month it didn't come. And mother inquired. And then she sent the secretaries out to find out if that man was all right for 1 rupee.
So everything she would note. So, we are so fortunate to have this exceptional privilege. So this is what the divine comes for, and this is the her avataric role. Few lines below we have aloof, apart, living within, all lives she bore. She is doing the yoga in all of us. People often come here looking for yogis. Then they downgrade and say, okay, sadhaks. Then suddenly they upgrade. Though they don't know whether they have downgraded or upgrade, when they suddenly find children all over.
Yeah.
From 15-year-old children to 50-year-old child and to 90-year-old child, they discover there are so many children, but where are the yogis and the sadhaks? They have merged and fused into just becoming her child.
Again, we just have one statement about Savitri, and now we hear that her nature felt all nature as its own,
Yes.
and she carried in herself the world.
Aloof, she carried in herself the world. I mean, honestly, except for portions where Christ speaks in a similar language, where he says, I am the path and I am the way and I am the goal. And Shri Krishna, when he says, I'll take care of everything, and he gives the grand vision of whole creation within himself. There is a whole vacuum in the entire mystic and spiritual tradition. We have had great yogis and masters, intellectually brilliant, people who could interpret the Vedas and give commentaries and guide and speak very beautifully, and even miracles, and start a cult or a sect, show the path to liberation. But here is someone who says, I'll carry you. Where do we find this? And repeatedly this same thing comes. So Savitri is about the Divine Mother taking the human burden upon herself.
Yes.
And what is Satyavan's yoga? Often, people say Ashwapati's yoga is there, Savitri's yoga is there, yoga of earth is there. Even the transformation of death is there. But tell us what we have to do. So what we have to do, like Satyavan say, lay all on her. She is the
cause of all.
Very difficult to understand.
Yes, very difficult.
Very difficult. Her dread was one with the great cosmic dread. Her strength was founded on the cosmic mights. The universal mother's love was hers. Against the evil at life's afflicted roots, her own calamity, its private sign. Of her pangs, she made a mystic, poignant sword. You see, this of her pangs, she had to go through many, many challenges. We have spoken about it. But look at one of the most difficult moments of mother's life. When she almost died, is not that famous incident where her thread was cut, etc.
That was in Algeria.
Yeah, that was in Algeria. But see, the biggest challenge for the divine is how to experience separation from the divine, which we experience as a natural and normal state. And we suffer because of that. And we don't even know that the real cause of her suffering is this separation. So she is the Divine Mother. How does she experience separation? So you see, when she goes away from Pondicherry for the first time when she has come, and after a 15-month stay she goes away. Read the very next prayer and you will wonder. Solitude, harsh solitude. Why hast thou cast me away from the felicity? She experienced a darkness as never before. And often people ask this question, why the mother had to go away? Well, because she had to experience the most intense suffering that human beings can ever experience is of separation from the Lord. The problem is we are all the time experiencing this suffering, but we don't even know that this is suffering. Because that is the remedy, is the union. So what she did, she left her psychic being here. She speaks of that. And she says, I nearly died. Because, there was no other way. And then of course she comes back. So even this she had to experience in her life.
Yes.
Otherwise, there is no other way. So only when there is a embodied divine and physically there is the separation can she experience the pang. And then toward the end, we have those lines, what she has come for. All came back to her, earth and love and doom. This page 9, the last two lines from below. The ancient disputants encircled her. So, it seems humanity has become side thing. What I gather often that even if not a single human being were present near Mother and Sri Aurobindo, still they would have done this yoga of transformation. And the mother says this in so many words, perhaps faster.
Yes.
So mother says that whenever the divine takes a human body, he takes it up to transform matter. And she says even if nobody recognizes him, he'll still do his work and go away. At least with Christ and Krishna, we know that very few people recognize their divinity while they were in the physical body. Even Sri Aurobindo, actually people don't realize, see how many, if you see ashram inmates were there through the, before 1950, if I am not mistaken, around 250. And during the war there was an influx. Otherwise, hardly. Now we speak about, thousands of people world over and Savitri doing the round in the world. But at that point of time, very few. People had their own stories about Sri Aurobindo and the mother.
Yes.
But very few were ready to take up this yoga. So she came back to her earth and love and dome. The ancient disputants encircled her like giant figures wrestling in the night. So on one side is earth, the other side is doom, and she is embodying the love and not justice.
Yes.
So that is the whole thing, that she has come to change the law of justice into the law of love. The Godheads from the dim inconscient born awoke to struggle and the pang divine, and in the shadow of her flaming heart, at the somber center of the dire debate, a guardian of the unconsoled abyss. Now, who is there? Look at it, in the shadow of her flaming heart.
Yeah.
There he comes, right there. And who is it? The inconscient. Sri Aurobindo is introducing us to the main protagonist,
Yes.
or antagonist.
Yes.
And see how he introduces. Inheriting the long agony of the globe, a guardian of the unconsoled abyss, inheriting the long agony of the globe. So, unconsoled abyss, you cannot appease this inconscient. No amount of sacrifice, no amount of tears. It is a bottomless pit. And then he says, inheriting the long agony of the globe. All the pain, all the struggle, and she speaks of that matter, because it has experienced evolution through struggle and pain, it believes that there cannot be a grace. We have to struggle, there is no other way. And it takes long for it to understand that yes, there is grace, but there is grace.
Yes.
So this, because the matter is directly supported by the inconscient below. And so inheriting the long agony of the globe. A stone still figure of high and godlike pain stared into space with fixed regardless eyes that saw grief's timeless depths but not life's goal. So this is the vision of death, the inconscient, which says, well, world is nothing but grief. Forget about goal, purpose. Maybe you can escape, but there can be no purpose in creation. And when mother was said that, she says, when first time I came to know that there is a God who punishes us, and then she says, I don't want to do anything with that monster.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A God who punishes. And people have the temerity to say, mother has punished you.
Or spoken harshly to you.
Harshly to you. Either they don't know the mother and her grace. Yeah, people say that. Even I have heard it sometimes here.
I have heard it.
Mother's punishment. If mother were to punish, all of us will have to pack our bags and God knows where we'll find refuge.
Return to dust.
Return to dust or less than dust. Afflicted by his harsh divinity. So there is divinity even there, but which has become, a stone-like figure.
Yeah.
Harsh, cruel,
Yes.
full of grief. So that is the image that the divine has assumed. An image which is full of tear and sorrow. Bound to his throne, he waited unappeased the daily oblation of her unwept tears. All the fierce question of man's hours relived. This sacrifice of suffering and desire earth offers to the immortal ecstasy began again beneath the eternal hand. So what can earth offer? All the desires that arise in it, and it wants the ecstasy, it offers the desire.
Yes.
The return is joy and suffering. Then it offers the suffering.
Yes.
So the divine says, now I'll do the offering on your behalf. And this explains the life of the avatars. I feel that in all the lives that have been written of Sri Aurobindo, because invariably there comes a leaning on the historicity, and there comes, a leaning on scholarly articles. I think this is missing. This missing the advent of the divine as an avatar. And if ever, say, it's my way of understanding, if the life has to be written, it should start with a question answer Sri Aurobindo gave to a young disciple. I think it was Nagin Doshi, who asked him that, in this life you have come as avatars, what were you doing in other lives? So he speaks, we were then as vibhutis. What were you doing as vibhutis? Carrying on the evolution.
Yes.
Sir, can you elaborate what does it mean carrying on the evolution? And Sri Aurobindo writes cryptically, it would mean writing the entire history of the world. Now, this is how we should start, because when you look at, the only scripture which I have read which comes close to this is Tulsi's Ramcharitmanas. Not even a Bhagavad gives some touch of it, where it starts from Krishna and the other one is Rama as avatar, that they are divine. You take it, you start from that baseline, and then everything that happens in their life begins to make sense. But if you don't know that they are divine, nothing makes sense. Often it can even create, issues that, why Sri Aurobindo is to go through it? Oh, he also had challenges and difficulties. At the most you can say, okay, this gives hope to us. Some people stretch that he also had these difficulties, but they don't realize there's a catch in that. If we take that position that Sri Aurobindo had difficulties and he could become a Sri Aurobindo, we could also become. Then we have to be like Sri Aurobindo and do the sadhana like him. Who can say that he can do sadhana like him? I mean, it will be illusion, worse illusion than anybody can harbor. Simply by shutting yourself in a room, you don't become Sri Aurobindo. Most likely you will become a, crazy madcap.
Use the
what
word
is
nonsense again. It would be
8
nonsense.
hours a day? How can you walk in a room?
Yeah.
I have actually literally tried it. After half an hour, you begin to wonder because mind doesn't work like that, Then you can stretch it to 1 hour. After that, because it's not about a mechanical action, it's a constant state, inward state in which he is living. How can you do that?
And the result of that walking was that his
Steps
footprints
on the
were
ground.
imprinted in the wood.
Yes. And human beings
Oh.
who covered it up. Unlike the steps of Buddha, which they have kept in Bodh Gaya. Buddha also used to walk. And there are imprints which they have kept. So the older disciples were more wiser. And that's why when Sri Aurobindo was asked about, why is it in this ashram you have so many difficulties and all, he said because the disciples are full of doubts So why do you have such disciples? He says, because it's a modern ashram and we have to take upon modern difficulties. So modern man's difficulty is doubt. He starts with doubt.
Yeah.
But I wish, that there was a very clear, like he is an avatar and start from there. And they even document their own statements, mother's statement, their past lives, where, very clearly how they have carried on the work, and then it leads to
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo's advent. And then why he has to go to the West, why mother has to be born in France. Everything one connects the dots and sees so beautifully interconnected.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's a series of events whose central thread is missing. So here, mark the words, began again. So eternal has come again and again on earth and put his weight on human side. And then we can close with these last few lines. Awake, she endured the moment's serried march and looked on this green, smiling, dangerous world. Only Sri Aurobindo could describe it with an integral perfection. So, not one-sided view. This we see everywhere in Sri Aurobindo. Yes, it's a dangerous world, but it's also a smiling world. Both are together. So,
Yes.
and heard the ignorant cry of living things. Amid the trivial sounds, the unchanging scene, her soul arose, confronting time and fate. Looking at humanity, what they would have expected. They must be knowing us through and through.
Yes.
Immobile in herself, she gathered force. This was the day when Satyavan must die.
I would like to close with something a few of us heard yesterday. This is not Sri Aurobindo Ashram. It is Sri Aurobindo's ashram.
Wow, wonderful. Where did you hear this? Anyways, that's not important, but it's so true. In fact, there is a letter dictated to Amal Kiran, which Sri Aurobindo dictated, where he says, the ashram is Sri Aurobindo and Sri Aurobindo is the ashram. It is his physical body. The whole extension is nothing else but his physical body. You want to share something? Yes.
Auroville Sri Aurobindo's city and Sri Aurobindo's planet.
What?
Yeah.
Auroville Sri Aurobindo's city and Earth Sri Aurobindo's planet.
Wow.
Yes, yes.
So this is Sri Aurobindo's ashram. Auroville is Sri Aurobindo's city. Yes, of
Yes,
course.
Yes.
And the earth is Sri Aurobindo's planet. This actually
Yes.
is the experience of
Yes.
Nidananda.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, what beautiful. Thank you.